Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. You got DanK on this side, and we got Reverend Will on this side. Appreciate Will coming in this evening, and we got some interesting stories. The one we want to start off with is this is local and really exciting. I say local, it's storylines out of Seattle, but the effort building to change the U.S. pot laws. An effort is building in Congress to change U.S. marijuana laws, including moves to legalize the industrial production of hemp and establish a federal pot tax. While passage this year could be a long shot, lawmakers from both parties have been quietly working on several bills. The first of which, Democratic Representatives Earl Blumenauer of Oregon and Jared Polis of Colorado plan to introduce Tuesday. Blumenauer told the Associated Press. Polis's measure would regulate marijuana the way the federal government handles alcohol. In states that legalize pot, growers would have to obtain a federal permit. Oversight of marijuana could be removed from the Drug Enforcement Administration and given to the newly named Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Marijuana, and Firearms. I can see some people complaining about that.
See, for me, I really don't want to be lumped in with the, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I'm not a part of that whole process.
Yeah, but I can see a problem. Yeah, and it would remain illegal to bring marijuana from a state where it's legal to one where it isn't. You know, it's interesting with the way the laws of the legalization passed in Colorado and Washington. It's going to be a real interesting mess with all the surrounding states, and it's going to be.
Well, I know at one point in time I flew from here to Michigan, and I asked them whether or not, being a card holder, I could take my herb to Michigan, which for a lot of people I would think that's pretty blatant. But for me, it's just necessary. And what I was told was because we would be stopping in Utah, then Utah was a state that did not have marijuana legal, that I couldn't take it because of that reason, because Michigan and Oregon had the legality. So, like you say about Washington, it's going to be interesting. Basically, the whole thing is the federal law needs to back off and get out of this insanity that they've been in and preventing us to do what every other person in this state has a right, and in this country has a right to do. That is work. I mean, right now, all of us that have been working on this and been laughed at by people and thought of as the butt of jokes forever, are saying that the things that we talked about are true. You talk about us having the munchies and how that's, it's a funny thing. You think it's funny for somebody who's on dialysis or who has cancer and has no energy to be able to fight their disease, and yet they find that not only can they imbibe and take in these substances, they can actually hold them down. So, I mean, when you talk about, things where we're accused of anecdotal comments regarding pot, to me, when you say that you can smell pot, whether it's there or not, that's pretty anecdotal to me. I mean, when you walk in and you actually find it there, then it's there. But to say that you can smell it either outside coming to you from the building or whatever, it's your word, which is anecdotal, just like ours is, until the point is made, until you've actually seen the pot in there or whatever else that we're talking about at the time. So.
Yeah, well, it's, anyway, back to the bill here. So the bill is based on a legalization measure previously pushed by former Representatives Barney Frank of Massachusetts and Ron Paul of Texas. And by the way, both of those are not going to be, aren't representatives anymore. But Blumenauer and Ms. Polis is going to be our new heroes, I guess. But They're working for us. Last year's vote in Colorado and Washington State to legalize recreational marijuana should push Congress to end the 75-year federal pot prohibition, Blumenauer said. You folks in Washington and my friends in Colorado really upset the apple cart, Blumenauer said. We're still arresting 2/3 of 1 million people for use of a substance that a majority feel should be legal. It's past time for us to step in and try to sort this stuff out. Advocates who are working with the lawmakers acknowledge it could take years for any changes to get through Congress, but they're encouraged by recent developments. Senator Minority Leader Mitch McConnell last week came out in support of efforts to legalize hemp in his home state of Kentucky, and U.S. Representative Dana Rohrabacher, a Republican in Colorado, is expected to introduce legislation allowing states to set their own policy on marijuana.
Which to me is the way it should be.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a Republican, so wow.
Yeah.
Senate Judiciary Chairman Patrick Leahy, Democrat Vermont has indicated he plans to hold a hearing in the conflict between state and federal marijuana laws and has urged an end to federal mandatory minimum sentences that lead to long prison stints for drug crimes. We're seeing enormous political momentum to undo the drug war failings of the past 40 years, said Bill Piper, Director and National Affairs for the Drug Policy Alliance, who has been working with lawmakers on marijuana-related bills. For the first time, the wind is behind our back. So that's well, you know, it's the walls are coming down. It's fantastic.
Right, but at the same time, you know, one of the things is when you declare war on a people, you know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You know, our government has declared war on us as a people because we choose to do drugs. Now, that's not right. I'm sorry, man. No matter how it goes, it's just like a political system where you go, you want the Democrat, you want. I'm sorry, you want to have democracy in these countries. Now you're imposing a democracy upon these countries when you say that as part of the conditions for you to get our help when you set it up, you're going to have a democracy. Okay, for me, right now, I choose to do drugs. Okay, I would like to be able to do LSD as well once in a while in a controlled situation so that I could expand my mind. Now, understand, I'm not trying to impose that on anybody else, nor am I trying to get anyone else to smoke herb. But by God, when you have people walking down the street every day who are polluting the air and killing me with cigarettes, and that's okay with people, that's okay with the DEA, that's okay with the federal, the Food and Drug Administration, that is not okay. You come into my home with guns and masks on, threatening my children and stuff, saying that I'm recklessly endangering them because I'm growing pot, yet you have people who are smoking cigarettes everywhere around their kids, walking down the street, smoking a cigarette over a child in a cart. That's not recklessly endangering that child. Understand, folks, the dichotomy of statements and how they're imposed upon us as a people is just totally unbalanced as far as I'm concerned. And if I didn't smoke pot, I would probably be one of those raving lunatics out there taking people out, you know, who are not paying attention to what the hell's going on. If you're not going to pay attention any other way, something needs to be done because we've asked, begged, and pleaded for you to help us in this process, and you haven't done it. You don't care. Right now, they're downtown talking about taxes. Okay, they're talking about putting taxes on the people of Eugene. What's the last thing the people in Eugene want? More taxes. We have stated, and I've taken DVDs into the mayors of both cities stating that we could help them with the sheriff's department and with the school systems, and they didn't even care to respond. Right now, they're down there trying to convince you about some tax law instead of allowing us to grow marijuana here and to be able to tax it and bring in industries and put people to work. What the hell's the matter with you folks that are in these positions of power that don't want to hear solutions? You got to force your solution down our throat, and that's ridiculous. And it really grinds me that veterans and our counterculture cannot get it together to put together ways that you as a people can understand it. Because apparently right now telling you the truth hasn't worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. One thing I want to bring up real quick is about the PTSD. There's this SB 281 going through the Oregon legislature now, and there's going to be a hearing coming up this coming Thursday. That's February 7th at 3 p.m. And that's going to be in hearing room A. It's very important for...
In Salem?
In Salem, thank you. Yes, in Salem, at the Capitol. It's really important because we need the numbers, we need the bodies. The legislature is actually looking at PTSD as a condition to add on to OMMP. We tried to go through the system twice, I believe twice, maybe three, but I know for a fact it's been at least twice, and turn it down, wouldn't even consider it. And yet they didn't have a problem with raising the fees and gouging the parents, or the patients with 100% increase, so they didn't mind gouging them the money, but they don't want to really care about helping people that really need the help. So that's
So while you're talking about that, you know, the whole thing is that we have no way of enforcing our growers to get us the medication that they promise us, you know, and that to me is one of the biggest signals that they don't care what's going on with us. They don't care. All you cancer patients, once again, I want to tell you, you got a cancer patient in your family, and if you're not looking the Rick Simpson's formula, or using marijuana to also help you to have a better appetite and to keep your food down. Those are things that you're not going to hear from your government and you're not going to hear from your doctors, because as much as they say they care about us, they don't care enough to follow through in a process where we get to even do the research that is necessary to be able to tell them whether or not it works. The reason that all of our stuff is anecdotal is because we cannot do the research without being illegal. Okay, and yet there's people that are working on this every day because they care more about the patients and the people involved than they do fear their government and going to jail. Not because they don't keep us in there, because they let the violent offenders out before they let the people who smoke herb or grow herb or try and get herb to people. And understand, folks, if you broke it down, it's a job. It's like any other job. You got to put time into it, you got to put effort into it, and yet we're supposed to get absolutely nothing back, nada. Now, how can you even let these people put that out there and not freak out? Just like all the side effects on the medicines that the Food and Drug Administration is putting out that says, oh, these are okay for you. Oh, I'm sorry, we had 15 people die of this and 60 of them are still in the hospital. That was a mistake we made. Okay, well, you've made another big one here, because understand, cannabis is not anecdotal, it's real, it helps people every day, it helps people to take care of you and do service for you every day and do it in a better attitude than you would have had without it. So
that's right.
We'll be back.
We got to wrap up this segment. We'll be right back, so don't go away.
Thanks.
Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Why these people who want to do so much good for everyone, who call themselves governments and this and that, why them say you must not use the herb? You see?
And now a message from the American Marijuana Growers Association.
Hi, I'm a farmer, and I work hard every day to grow high-quality marijuana, the biggest cash crop in these United States. I'd like to thank you for your support of U.S. marijuana policy. Because marijuana is illegal, I don't have to pay taxes. Even better, prohibition leads to artificially inflated prices, which means a better quality of life for me and my family, as long as I don't get caught. Just as importantly, your tax dollars support thousands of U.S. agents who work tirelessly to keep low-grade, foreign marijuana out of our country. So thank you, America. And remember, whether you're nauseated from chemotherapy or just in the mood for a nice cool buzz, choose the best pot in the world, American homegrown.
Welcome back. We're here for the second episode of the Eugene Cannabis TV show. We have Reverend Will on my right and me on my left. You got DanK here. So we're real tall. I want to bring up PTSD one more time. I mentioned in the last segment, February 7th, which is on a Thursday, 3 p.m., Salem. We need you to be there at Hearing Room A. There's going to be quite a crowd there, and we need more bodies, all we can get. They're going to be looking at having a hearing on SB 281 to add PTSD to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program, and that would be a big thing. And what's neat about it is this legislature just getting into session, and already we're looking at something to improve the OMMP, as opposed to usually it's the law enforcement trying to tear down the OMMP. And so it's cruel. We're coming on with a preemptive shot, you know. So that's good.
Well, the PTSD, the interesting thing about that is it's not just veterans that are dealing with PTSD. For all of our friends out there who have had injuries and other traumatic events that have happened in their lives that have them using marijuana to help them, you definitely need carpool, get there whatever way you can. You know, we'll do a weekend if you contact us.
Israel, the country of Israel, is using it to treat their veterans.
Right, so. With PTSD, and have been for a while now.
Yeah. So go ahead, you got a story there.
You know me, I like to bring up things from Michigan. So we have this from the Detroit Free Press, and it's talking about sharing medical pot is not a crime. Michigan Appeals Court rules.
With another patient. Excuse me, go ahead.
No. The Michigan Appeals Court says there's nothing illegal about a medical marijuana user providing a small amount of pot to another registered user at no cost. The court agreed today with a Berry County judge who had dismissed charges against the medical marijuana user who provided the drug to another at no cost. It's the first decision by the appeals court in a case involving marijuana that changed hands without money. There is no dispute that Tony Green provided less than 2.5 ounces of marijuana to Al Thornton in Nashville, Michigan in September 2011. Both were qualified to use medical marijuana. The Supreme Court heard arguments last fall in a case involving cash sales of marijuana. A decision is still pending there. The appeals court in 2011 said such sales are illegal. So once again, one of the things that we were talking about just before we went off, took our break, was the fact that we're expected to do all this stuff with absolutely no compensation. Now, I don't know any other business that makes it without any compensation whatsoever in their process for services rendered. But we as a culture are looked at as people who can magically do this, and yet we're looked down upon when we do it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's the paradox.
Oh, we're a living paradox. There is no ifs, ands, buts about that, but it's only because we don't get the same respect everybody else does. You know? Definitely.
That's why I like that symbol with the equal sign, pot leaf with the equal sign below it. You know, it's
equality.
Yeah, equal quality, exactly. So we got a op-ed out of the LA Times. This is called the DEA's Pot Defense. Reacting to federal appellate court decision upholding the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's denial of reclassification of marijuana, the Times states in its January 25th editorial that whether marijuana should be reclassified under federal law to permit its prescription as a medicine should be based on science and an evaluation of the facts rather than on myths. And this is written by Robert Bonner. He says, I fully agree. And yet the editorial is based on the myth that the DEA has made it nearly impossible for researchers to obtain marijuana for such scientific studies. To the contrary, not a single scientifically valid study of by a qualified researcher has ever been denied by the DEA, for that matter by the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And there is ample government-grown marijuana, specifically for research, available at the marijuana farm run by the University of Mississippi. More surprising, as your editorials points out, is that there is no scientifically valid study that proves that marijuana is effective, much less safe as a medicine. As the DEA administrator 20 years ago, I denied the reclassification of marijuana from a Schedule I controlled substance because there was no valid scientific study showing that smoking marijuana was an effective medicine. In my decision, published in the Federal Register, I interpreted federal law and set forth a 5-part test that included whether there were valid scientific studies demonstrating that marijuana was safe and effective for treating any medical condition. I noted that at that time there were none of the kind of controlled double-blind studies that the Food and Drug Administration would require before approving a new drug application, and I clearly spelled out that this would be necessary before marijuana would be reclassified onto a lower schedule that would permit its use as a physician-prescribed medicine. Initially, I invited those who advocate marijuana as a medicine to conduct research and then present it to the DEA. I laid out a roadmap for what they needed to do. If specifically valid studies demonstrated that marijuana was effective and safe, as the FDA defines these terms, the agency would reclassify marijuana into one of the other schedules. It is amazing that 20 years later there is still no such scientific study establishing that marijuana is effective as a medicine. And yet, in the interim, the well-funded marijuana lobby, including the National Association for the Reform of Marijuana Laws and others, have spent tens of millions of dollars on convincing voters to pass medical marijuana initiatives based on anecdotes, but not science. The reason the FDA and DEA have scientific standards is because snake oil salesmen are able to sell just about anything to sick people without any specific proof that it has a truly helpful therapeutic effect. If proponents of medical marijuana had invested even a small fragment of their money in scientifically valid studies, we would know one way or the other whether it works. One can only conclude that marijuana proponents did not go this route because doing so would have shown that cannabis is not an effective and safe medicine. Alternately, we are left to conclude that their agenda was not about marijuana to help sick people, but rather was getting voters to pass medical marijuana initiatives as a wedge to legalize the drug for recreational use. That's the same old
standards
yes.
that they've been using forever. And the thing is that that's a discriminatory statement because it's all based on their perception of whether or not this is beneficial. Ask my friend Philip, who's been on dialysis 25 years. The one thing he says that he does differently than all the other dialysis patients that he sees come and go and actually die because they're not smoking or imbibing marijuana to help them have an appetite, to have them be able to keep what they eat down. Now, we all know from cancer, everybody knows about cancer. So the thing is, we know that that's one of the biggest problems there too. If you don't have the energy to fight the illness, how are you going to get better? And the only way you're going to do that is by eating food. And if you don't eat and hold the food down, then you're not going to get the energy that you need. Now, it doesn't take a scientist to figure that out, folks. You just look at somebody in a hospital who can smoke something and all of a sudden eat and keep it down. If that's happening, how is that anecdotal? And yet we have no way of actually being able to do this because we can't do the research, just like our impotency with our industrial hemp. We don't want to forget that, Floyd. I want to bring it up to you. Appreciate you making it legal. What the hell good did it do? Okay, we still have no pot being grown, no marijuana, no cannabis in this valley, with the acceptance of the law enforcement. Federal law enforcement. You know, you're supposed to be able to say that and feel good about it. I don't feel good about it. I haven't felt good about it forever. And people ask me, you know, about how I feel about this country. Hey, I'd just as soon be riding around with my flag upside down as I would be to have it shown at all, because we're definitely in distress. If you think this is the only thing that's happening, look what's happening with your guns now, folks. Y'all are going to listen and hand over your guns if the federal government says you can't have them anymore? I bet not. You know what? That's going to make you illegal. Hey, you know, we told you it was coming. It happened to us. You didn't pay attention. You know, so we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, I've said for years that we're transitioning to a police state, and And people tell me I'm being radical, but
you're so
these things happen a little bit at a time, and we don't notice it. It's like the old thing about cooking a frog, you know? You heard about that? You put a frog in a pot of water, room temperature, put the frog in, everything's fine, you turn the heat up, the frog will never notice the heat rising until it's too late.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We're just sitting in the kettle and the water temperature is going up and up and up and up. But pro-cannabis people, we've been fighting back, and we're still fighting.
Yeah, the thing is, we still don't get the respect. I mean, understand, right now, City Hall, right now, while we're filming this, is down talking about taxing the people of Eugene. How many times are the people of Eugene going to say, we don't want these taxes? And understand, when you're showing no intelligence by letting people out of prison and out of jail who create crimes where people are definitely victims and definitely hurt in their process.
Yeah, I've got another op-ed just written by Michelle Alexander. It was in the New York Times. Why police lie under oath. It said, numerous law enforcement officials have put the matter quite bluntly. Peter Keene, a former San Francisco police commissioner, wrote an article in the San Francisco Chronicle decrying a police culture that treats lying as the norm. Police officer perjury in court to justify illegal dope searches is commonplace. One of the dirty little not-so-secret secrets of the criminal justice system is undercover narcotics officers intentionally lying under oath. It is a perversion of the American justice system that strikes directly at the rule of the law. Yet it is the routine way of doing business in courtrooms everywhere in America. Okay. And I knew he got it.
You know, Pete Kearns, you know, our current police chief, swore under oath things that never happened in my court case in order to convict me and get me off the streets because I was starting to be effective. Understand that, Pete. I'll never forget that, and I'll never trust you. So we have Pete Kearns, who lies. We have Floyd Przansky, who puts through a law and then goes, well, I put it through. I'm trying to do something about it, but can't grow. Sorry.
Yep, that's right.
So stay stuck in your crap, because understand it's not my crap.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioned that. I was going to ask you if you had a comment for me, so I appreciate it. I knew that would bring it out.
Sorry about that, but folks, when it's real and it happens in your life, you got to say.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah, we can all have our story. So we're going to wrap it up, and things are looking better, folks, so keep your thumbs up. And
keep watching. Tell your friends. Have a party.
Eugene Cannabis TV.
Yeah.